Studio air felt different before anyone could name it. The lights were bright but soft on the edges, like they were holding their breath. Somewhere behind the curtains, a small hum from machines blended with the quiet that lives between laughter. Keanu sat in his chair and felt a gentle pressure in his chest, not pain, just a reminder. It was the kind of feeling that arrives without a clear reason, like a memory you cannot fully reach. He blinked once and listened to the room, as if the room was listening back. Jimmy Fallon smiled with the easy warmth that made the audience feel safe. The band was ready, the cameras were ready, the night was ready. Keanu kept his hands together for a moment, steady and calm, and noticed how smooth the desk looked under the studio lights. He could hear the audience settling into their seats, a soft wave of whispers and small breaths. He had been on shows like this many times. He knew the rhythm, the jokes, the friendly questions, the applause that came in the right places. Still, something in him felt slightly off, like a button on a shirt that was not lined up, small but impossible to ignore. When the intro ended, the claps rose, then faded, then rose again. Jimmy welcomed him, and the crowd cheered, and Keanu offered a quiet smile that looked simple but carried a lot inside it. Jimmy made a few light jokes, and Keanu laughed politely, his laugh soft and honest. The audience loved him for that, not because he tried to shine, but because he never tried too hard. He looked out at the faces, a blur of happiness and curiosity, and he felt grateful. He also felt the strange pressure again, like a thought knocking from the inside. Jimmy asked about a recent project, and Keanu answered in a calm, respectful way. He spoke about teamwork, about people who worked hard behind the scenes, about how every set felt like a group effort. The crowd clapped, and Keanu nodded as if he wanted the applause to land somewhere else, somewhere beyond him. Jimmy leaned forward, friendly and alert, and kept the pace moving. The talk was smooth, the mood was bright, and everything looked normal to anyone watching at home. But Keanu noticed a small change near the stage. It was not dramatic, it was almost nothing. A crew member near the curtain lifted a hand, then lowered it, like a quiet signal. Another person near the cameras adjusted a headset and looked toward Jimmy, then looked away. Keanu had learned to read rooms without staring, to notice without making it a story. These were tiny movements, normal in a live show. Still, the feeling in his chest grew slightly heavier, as if those small motions had a message for him. He breathed in slowly, and he tried to tell himself it was just nerves, just the bright lights, just another night. He did not feel fear, he felt responsibility. He had always carried responsibility like a habit, like something he did not choose but never dropped. He carried it for friends, for strangers, for the people who expected him to be steady. He carried it even when he wanted to sit down somewhere quiet and let the world move without him. He did not say any of this, not yet. He just smiled and answered another question. Jimmy shifted to a fun segment, something simple and playful. The band played a short sound, the audience laughed, and Keanu followed along. He was good at this, he was kind, he was present. The questions were safe, the jokes were clean, the moment was designed to feel light. Then Jimmy glanced at a card on his desk, and Keanu noticed the smallest pause in Jimmy, the kind of pause most people would miss. Jimmy looked at Keanu, then at the crowd, then back at Keanu, and his smile softened. Keanu felt the room tilt by a single degree. It was still the same set, the same lights, the same sound, but the air changed. It reminded him of the moment before rain, when the wind shifts and the world becomes quiet for no clear reason. Jimmy set the card down, not with a flourish, but with care. He spoke more slowly, like he wanted his words to be gentle. Jimmy said that he wanted to ask something different tonight. He said that the show was full of fun, but sometimes people watching at home needed something else. He said that he had met many guests, and most of them were ready to perform a version of themselves. He said that Keanu never felt like a performance. He said that was rare. The audience got quieter, not because they were told to, but because they could feel the change. Keanu looked at Jimmy and held his expression steady. He did not want attention for his calm. He did not want praise for his silence. He just wanted to be respectful in the moment, because Jimmy was offering a real question, not a trick. Jimmy asked how he was doing, not as a headline, not as a joke, not as a setup. He asked in a human way, with a careful tone that made the question feel private, even with cameras rolling. The question was simple, but it landed like weight because it was honest. Keanu did not answer right away. He felt the pressure in his chest rise, and it surprised him how strong it was. It was not sadness, it was not anger, it was not pain. It was the feeling of being seen when you have been hiding in plain sight. It was the feeling of someone knocking on a door you forgot you had locked. He took a breath, slow and deep, and the microphones caught it. The room heard it. The audience felt it. It was only a breath, but it sounded like a choice. Keanu looked down for a moment, as if he was finding the right place to stand inside himself. He could have made a joke. He could have said he was great, he could have praised the crowd, he could have moved the moment away from anything serious. He had done that before many times because it made things easy. But that breath had opened something, and now he could not pretend it was not there. Jimmy did not rush him, the band did not play, the audience did not interrupt. It was quiet, and the quiet felt respectful, like the whole room had agreed to hold space for a real answer. Keanu lifted his eyes again, and he spoke softly. He said that people asked him about movies and motorcycles and work, and that was fine. He said he felt lucky to do what he did. He said he was grateful for the love he received. Then he paused again, and the room stayed with him. He said that some days he felt like he was running on kindness that other people gave him. He said he tried to return it because that mattered to him. He said he did not want to complain because he knew life was hard for many people. He said he was learning something new, and it was not easy for him to say out loud. Jimmy listened like a friend, not like a host. Keanu said that he had spent years being strong in quiet ways. He said that sometimes strength was just showing up and staying polite and doing your job. He said that sometimes strength became a habit that made you forget you were tired. He said he had been tired in a way that did not show on the outside. The audience did not gasp, they did not laugh, they did not turn away. They listened. It was not a dramatic confession, it was a human truth, plain and simple. Keanu felt his chest loosen a little, like the air was finally moving again. Then a small sound came from behind the stage, a soft click like a switch. Keanu heard it, and Jimmy heard it too. Jimmy glanced toward the curtain for a split second, then looked back at Keanu with steady calm. The cameras stayed on Keanu, but Keanu could sense something was happening. It was not chaos, it was controlled, but it was real. Keanu stopped speaking. The room held its breath again. He did not know what the click meant, but he knew it mattered. He looked toward Jimmy, and Jimmy gave him a tiny nod, like he was saying that it was okay, that they would handle it. Keanu felt a new kind of suspense, not fear, but uncertainty. He realized the honest moment they had entered could be interrupted by something outside their control. And in that quiet, with the lights still warm and the crowd still watching, Keanu understood that his next words would not only answer Jimmy. They would answer something inside himself that had been waiting a long time. The click behind the curtain was only the beginning of whatever tonight was becoming. The quiet did not break right away. It stretched gently, like a thread that no one wanted to snap. Keanu kept his eyes on Jimmy, and Jimmy kept his face calm, but the calm was not empty, it was careful. The audience could feel that something had shifted behind the curtain, even if they could not see it. The studio lights stayed the same, bright and clean, but the air felt thinner, like the room was waiting for a sign. Keanu heard a second sound, softer than the first, like a small latch settling into place. He did not turn his head quickly. He had learned that sudden movement can make fear louder. He simply paused as if he was choosing respect for the moment over curiosity. His hands stayed together, fingers lightly touching, and he felt the steady beat in his chest. The pressure was still there, but now it was mixed with a quiet clarity. He had already taken the breath. He could not go back to the easy version of the conversation. Jimmy spoke first, not to fill space, but to protect it. He said softly that live television had surprises and that everyone was safe. His tone carried the kind of kindness that does not ask for applause. The audience laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because the gentle reassurance gave them permission to breathe again. Keanu watched Jimmy with gratitude. Jimmy was doing something rare. He was using his role to hold the room steady. A stage manager appeared near the edge of the curtain, half visible, careful not to step into the main light. The stage manager lifted a hand and gave Jimmy a small signal. It was quick, practiced, and respectful. Jimmy nodded once, very small, and turned back to Keanu. He did not look annoyed, he did not look embarrassed. He looked present. Keanu felt a strange warmth at the back of his eyes, not tears yet, just the beginning of feeling. He realized how long it had been since someone had treated a pause as important, instead of treating it like a problem. Jimmy leaned forward a little and said that he wanted to stay with the question if Keanu was willing. He said it in a way that gave Keanu control, not pressure. Keanu nodded. His voice came out softer than before. He said he appreciated that Jimmy asked the question the way he did. He said that most days he could talk about work with no trouble because work had clear lines. You show up, you do your part, you respect the people around you. But feelings did not have clear lines. Feelings could sit in your chest for years and still not have a name. Jimmy listened, eyes steady, hands resting on the desk. He did not interrupt with jokes. He did not jump to fix it. He simply stayed there. The audience stayed quiet too, the kind of quiet that feels like support, not like tension. Keanu said that he had always believed in being kind, not as a performance, but as a decision. He said kindness helped him when life felt heavy. He said it helped other people too, and that mattered to him. Then he admitted something that surprised even him. He said that sometimes kindness became a way to hide. He said you can give and still avoid saying the one true sentence, the sentence that starts with "I need." The audience shifted in their seats. A few people nodded slowly, like they understood without needing more. Keanu felt his chest tighten again, but this time it was not pressure, it was courage forming. He took another breath, slower, and he kept going. He said that lately he had been waking up with a feeling he could not explain. He said it was not panic, but it was a quiet alarm, like an inner voice whispering that something needed attention. He said he tried to ignore it by staying busy. He said he filled his calendar, he answered messages fast, he said yes when he wanted to say maybe. He said it worked for a while. Then one day, he realized his smile felt heavy, like he was carrying it instead of wearing it. Jimmy looked at him and said that was a powerful way to describe it. He said many people feel that. He said the hard part is admitting it without judging yourself. He said he was grateful that Keanu was speaking about it in a simple way, because simple words reach people better than dramatic words. Keanu gave a small smile, grateful and tired at the same time. He said he did not want to make the show sad. He said he respected the audience and the format. Jimmy shook his head gently and said that honesty is not sadness. He said honesty can be relief. That line landed. Keanu felt the room soften around him. He felt the audience stop expecting entertainment and start offering attention. He felt the cameras stop feeling like machines and start feeling like witnesses. He realized that this was not just an interview anymore. It was a moment of shared humanity. Then the stage manager returned, closer this time, still careful. The stage manager leaned toward Jimmy, just outside the main camera angle, and spoke in a low voice. Jimmy listened without changing his face too much, but Keanu saw a small change in Jimmy's eyes. It was a flicker of concern, controlled and professional. Jimmy nodded again. Keanu sensed the suspense rising. He did not know what the message was, but the timing felt strange. He wondered if something was wrong with the show or the building or the broadcast. His mind tried to solve it because the mind loves control. But Keanu forced himself to stay present. He kept his eyes on Jimmy, not on the curtain. He decided that whatever was happening behind the scenes, he would not let it steal the honesty he had just begun. Jimmy cleared his throat softly and looked at the camera for a moment. He said there was a small technical issue that they were handling, and they would continue in a moment. He smiled, calm and reassuring. The audience clapped lightly, as if to help the show keep moving. The band stayed quiet, waiting. The lights did not go out, the sound did not cut, but the studio temperature felt like it dropped by a single degree. Keanu noticed a faint smell, something like warm metal or dust near a light, the kind of smell you notice only when you stop talking. He felt the back of his neck cool slightly. It was subtle, but it added a new layer to the suspense. Jimmy turned back to Keanu and said quietly that he wanted to ask one more thing while they had this space. He asked Keanu what he does when he feels that inner alarm. Keanu stared at the desk for a second, then looked up. He said the truth was, he often tries to outwork it. He said he tells himself to be grateful and to push through. He said he does not like to burden people with his tiredness. Jimmy nodded and his voice softened. He said that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not to push through. He said sometimes the kindest thing is to pause and to let someone else be kind to you. He said he was not saying that as a host, he was saying it as a person. Keanu felt his throat tighten. He blinked slowly. He did not want the moment to become dramatic. He wanted it to stay real. He said that was hard for him because he had built his life around being steady. He said he did not want anyone to worry about him. Jimmy said that caring is not worry, caring is respect. The audience stayed quiet, absorbing each line. Keanu realized that the suspense was no longer only about what was happening behind the curtain. The suspense was inside him. Would he accept care, even in a small way, in front of a room full of strangers? Then, without warning, a small red light on the edge of a camera blinked twice, then stayed on. It was not the normal tally light. It was a different indicator, one that crew members notice. A person near the camera looked toward the curtain and raised 2 fingers. The stage manager moved quickly, still controlled, still quiet. Jimmy noticed it, and his posture changed slightly, like a driver gripping the wheel a little tighter. Keanu felt a cold line of uncertainty move through him. He did not know what the blinking light meant. He only knew it was a signal. He turned his head just a little careful and saw a door near the side of the stage open a few inches, then close again. No one rushed in. No one shouted. The silence remained polite, which somehow made it more unsettling. Jimmy leaned closer to Keanu and spoke under his breath, still smiling for the cameras. He said everything was fine, but they might need to take a short break. Keanu nodded, trusting him. But inside, Keanu felt something else, a quiet realization. The breath he took earlier was not just a breath. It was a doorway. And tonight, something on the other side of that doorway was waiting to be faced. Keanu looked at Jimmy and said softly that if they had to pause, it was okay. He said pauses can be useful. He said sometimes a pause is where you finally hear what you have been avoiding. Jimmy's eyes warmed, and he nodded again, this time with genuine respect. Then Jimmy looked to the camera and smiled. He said they were going to take a short moment and they would be right back. The audience clapped, relieved to have a clear cue. The band played a gentle sound, not loud, just enough to guide the transition. As the cameras shifted, Keanu stayed seated for a beat longer than expected. He watched the lights, the people, the moving pieces of a show that usually feels smooth. He felt the mystery deepen. What was the technical issue? Why did it arrive right when he started telling the truth? And why, in the middle of the noise and bright light, did he suddenly feel like this moment was meant for more than television? The break felt longer from the inside. The music faded, the applause settled, and the studio slipped into a working quiet that most viewers never see. Keanu stayed in his chair, hands still together, feeling the shape of the moment change. Crew members moved with careful speed, shoes soft against the floor, voices low and controlled. Nothing felt rushed, yet everything felt important. Jimmy leaned toward him and spoke gently, asking if he was okay. Keanu nodded. He said he was fine, and he meant it, but fine felt different now. It felt thinner, like a word that no longer covered the full truth. He noticed how the lights above seemed brighter during the break, less friendly, more technical. Without the audience sound, he could hear the faint hum of electricity, steady and constant, like a reminder that the show was a machine as well as a moment. A producer approached them from the side, posture calm but eyes focused. The producer explained there had been a minor issue with one of the control systems. Nothing dangerous, nothing dramatic, just enough to require attention. The producer spoke clearly, respectfully, and then waited as if allowing space for questions. Jimmy thanked them. Keanu listened quietly, absorbing the words without reacting. What stayed with Keanu was not the explanation. It was the timing. The issue appeared the moment he chose honesty. His mind knew this was coincidence, but his heart felt something else. It felt like resistance, like the world gently pushing back when you step out of habit. He had felt it before in smaller ways, when silence made others uncomfortable, when kindness slowed a fast room. This felt like that, only louder. The producer asked if Keanu felt comfortable continuing the conversation where it left off. There was no pressure in the question. It was real. Keanu looked at Jimmy. Jimmy did not answer for him. He waited. That waiting felt like respect, and it mattered. Keanu said yes. His voice was calm, but inside, something firm settled into place. He realized that stopping now would feel like retreat, not because of the audience, not because of the cameras, but because of himself. He had opened a door. He wanted to know what was on the other side. The producer nodded and stepped back. The band leader lifted a hand slightly, ready. A stage assistant counted quietly. The red recording lights returned to their steady glow. The audience noise began to rise again, guided and gentle. The show resumed. Jimmy smiled at the camera, welcoming everyone back. His tone was warm, but there was a new layer beneath it, something slower and more grounded. He turned to Keanu and thanked him for staying with the conversation. He said moments like this mattered, even if they were unexpected. Keanu nodded. He felt the audience energy return, but it was different now, less playful, more attentive. He could feel eyes on him, not hungry for entertainment, but open to listening. That awareness brought a small wave of pressure, then passed. He took another breath, quieter this time, just for himself. Jimmy asked him what had changed recently that made the inner alarm louder. The question was careful, not digging for details, not pulling for drama. It was an invitation. Keanu thought for a moment. He said that nothing big had happened. No single event, no sudden loss, no clear reason. He said that was what made it confusing. He said he had learned to handle storms, but this was more like fog. It made everything slower, heavier, without showing where the weight came from. He said that over time, he realized he had been measuring himself by how useful he was to others. If he was needed, he felt steady. If he was not needed, he felt unsure. He said that kind of thinking can sneak up on you, especially when people praise your kindness. He said praise can feel good, but it can also quietly teach you to disappear behind it. The audience stayed quiet, some nodding, some still. Jimmy listened closely. He said that was something many people struggle with, especially those who try to be good without asking for much. He said the danger is forgetting that rest is not failure. Keanu felt that sentence land deeper than expected. Rest is not failure. It echoed inside him, simple and strong. He realized how rarely he allowed himself to believe that. He smiled, small and genuine, explained nothing. Then something unexpected happened. A voice came through Jimmy's earpiece just loud enough that Jimmy paused mid-breath. It was not an interruption meant for air. It was urgent but controlled. Jimmy nodded slightly, eyes shifting for a brief moment. The audience noticed the pause but did not understand it. Jimmy looked back at Keanu and said they had a choice. He said they could move to the next planned segment, or they could stay here a little longer. He said the show could handle either. He asked Keanu what he preferred. The room seemed to lean forward. This was the twist, quiet but real. The format was offering to bend. Keanu felt the weight of that choice. Moving on would be easy. Staying would be honest. He thought of the people watching at home, tired and quiet in their own rooms. He thought of the breath he took earlier. He thought of how rare it was to be offered space without demand. He chose to stay. He said he wanted to finish the thought, if that was okay. Jimmy smiled and said it was more than okay. The audience clapped softly, not loud, not wild, just supportive. Keanu continued. He said that the inner alarm was not telling him to stop working, but to change how he listened to himself. He said he had been ignoring small signals, tight shoulders, shallow breaths, a sense of being always on. He said he did not blame anyone for it. He said it was a habit he built with good intentions. He said that taking the breath earlier surprised him. He said it felt like a door opening just a little. He said he realized he did not have to explain everything, but he could acknowledge the feeling. He said acknowledgement was a form of kindness too. Jimmy nodded and said that was powerful. He said the culture often rewards people for never stopping. He said seeing someone respected choose to pause sends a different message. He said it gives others permission. Keanu felt something soften in his chest again. He realized this was no longer just about him. The suspense shifted from the technical issues to something quieter and deeper. Would he allow this moment to change him, or would it stay as a story he told once on a show? Then the producer appeared again at the edge of the stage, this time visible enough that the audience could sense it. The producer held up a finger, signaling 1 minute. Time pressure returned, firm and real. The show had to move on soon. Keanu felt a flicker of urgency, not fear but awareness. He had one more chance to say something true before the moment closed. He did not want to perform wisdom. He wanted to offer something simple. He said that he was still learning how to receive care. He said it was uncomfortable for him, but he was trying. He said that if anyone watching felt tired in a way they could not explain, they were not broken. He said sometimes the body speaks before the mind catches up. The audience applauded, louder this time, but still respectful. Jimmy thanked him sincerely. He said that honesty like that stays with people longer than jokes. As the band prepared to play them out, Keanu noticed the same faint smell near the lights again. It was stronger now, just enough to register. He saw a technician glance upward, then toward another crew member. Their faces were calm but focused. Something was still being managed behind the scenes. Keanu stood as the applause rose. He shook Jimmy's hand, firm and grateful. They shared a look that said more than words. The cameras pulled back. The show moved toward its ending. But as Keanu walked toward the side of the stage, guided by an assistant, he felt a strange certainty settle in him. The technical issue, the pauses, the choice to stay honest, none of it felt random anymore. It felt like a test, gentle but clear. He realized that the real suspense was not about whether the show would continue smoothly. It was about whether he would continue differently after tonight. And he sensed that the answer to that question was about to be challenged in a way he did not expect. The hallway behind the stage felt cooler than the studio. The noise of applause faded into a distant echo, replaced by soft footsteps and quiet voices. Keanu walked slowly, guided by an assistant who spoke in calm whispers. The walls were plain, practical, meant for movement, not reflection. Yet Keanu felt his thoughts growing louder with every step. He noticed crew members standing closer together than usual. Not panicked, not rushed, but alert. A technician spoke into a headset with measured focus. Another checked a panel on the wall and nodded. The faint smell from the stage followed them here too, metal and heat mixed, subtle but present. Keanu understood now that something real had been happening during the show, something carefully contained. The assistant led him into a small waiting room. The door closed gently behind them. The room was simple: a couch, a table, a bottle of water. Keanu sat down and rested his hands on his knees. His breathing slowed, but his awareness sharpened. The honesty he had shared on stage had opened him up, and now every small detail felt amplified. A producer entered the room and explained more clearly this time. One of the lighting systems had overheated during the interview. It was not dangerous yet, but it could have been if ignored. The crew handled it quietly to avoid panic and keep everyone safe. The producer apologized for the interruption and thanked Keanu for staying calm. Keanu listened and nodded. Safety mattered. Care mattered. He felt grateful for the professionalism around him. But something inside him shifted again. The overheating lights felt like a mirror. Too much output, not enough pause. Too much brightness without rest. The thought arrived gently, but it stayed. Jimmy came into the room a moment later. He looked relieved but thoughtful. He thanked Keanu again, not for the show, but for the moment they shared. He said the control room had been tense, not because of the conversation, but because of how much it mattered. He said people were listening in a way that does not happen often on live television. Keanu smiled and said he felt it too. He said it surprised him. He said he did not plan to say those things. Jimmy said that was why they landed. Planned words rarely breathe. They sat in a quiet understanding for a moment. Then Jimmy shared something unexpected. He said that earlier that day, before the show, a crew member had asked if they could keep the tone light tonight. The crew member said people needed laughter. Jimmy agreed at the time. But when he asked the honest question on air, he realized laughter was not the only relief people needed. This was the twist Keanu did not expect. The question that changed the night had almost not been asked. The space that allowed honesty had almost been filled with noise. Keanu felt a deep respect for that choice. He realized how fragile meaningful moments are, how easily they can be replaced by something easier. Keanu said that maybe kindness sometimes means trusting silence. Jimmy nodded. He said silence scares people because it cannot be controlled. He said tonight proved that silence can also protect. A stage manager knocked lightly and said the show was wrapping. Keanu stood, thanked everyone in the room, and prepared to leave. As he walked back through the hallway, the lights were dimmer now, cooler. The smell was gone. The crisis had passed. Yet inside Keanu, something continued to burn, not dangerously, but steadily. The truth he spoke had not closed anything. It had opened responsibility to himself. Outside the studio, night air greeted him softly. It felt different after the bright lights, calmer, real. Keanu paused near the exit, feeling the weight of the day settle. He realized that the applause would fade, the clips would circulate, and the moment would become a story. But the choice he made to pause, to stay honest, would follow him quietly. As he stepped forward, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He did not look at it yet. He already sensed that whatever waited there would ask him the same question Jimmy did. How are you really doing? And this time, there would be no audience, no lights, no music to lean on. The suspense was no longer public. It was personal, and Keanu knew the hardest part was still ahead. The night outside felt wide and quiet. Keanu stepped away from the studio doors and let the cool air settle on his skin. The city moved around him without asking anything, cars passing, distant voices, soft lights reflecting on glass. He stood still for a moment, not because he was tired, but because he did not want to rush past the feeling that followed him out. He finally looked at his phone. It was not a headline or a message from a manager. It was a short note from someone who worked on the show, a crew member he had thanked earlier. The message was simple. It said, "Thank you for saying that. I did not know I needed to hear it tonight." Keanu read it twice. The words were plain, but they carried weight. He replied with care, telling them he was glad it helped and that he meant every word. As he put the phone away, he felt a small shift inside. The honesty he shared had already moved beyond the studio. It was touching people quietly, without announcement. That realization brought warmth, but it also brought responsibility. If his words mattered, then his actions had to follow them. A car waited nearby. Keanu got in and rested his head back for a moment. The driver asked if everything was okay. Keanu smiled and said yes, it was. But again, yes felt like a surface word. He looked out the window as the city passed and let his thoughts move freely. He thought about the overheating lights, the way the system had kept running until someone noticed the warning signs. He saw himself in that image too clearly to ignore. He had ignored his own signals for years, believing endurance was the same as strength. Tonight had challenged that belief. The car stopped at a quiet corner near his hotel. Keanu thanked the driver and stepped out. The building was calm, almost empty at this hour. The lobby lights were low, respectful of rest. As he walked inside, he noticed a staff member at the desk rubbing their eyes, shoulders slightly tense. Keanu paused not to perform kindness, but because he felt it. He greeted them softly and asked how their night was going. The staff member looked surprised, then smiled honestly. They said it had been long, but fine. Keanu nodded and said he understood. He did not add advice. He did not add meaning. He simply wished them a good rest when their shift ended. The exchange lasted seconds, but it felt real. Kindness did not need speeches. Upstairs in his room, Keanu sat by the window. The city lights stretched below like scattered stars. He took another breath, slow and deep, and paid attention to how his body felt. Tired, yes, but also lighter. The pressure in his chest had changed shape. It was no longer asking to be ignored. It was asking to be understood. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Jimmy. The message was warm and direct. Jimmy thanked him for trusting the moment. He said the response from the audience and crew had been strong, not loud, but meaningful. He said people felt respected by the honesty. Keanu replied with gratitude and told Jimmy the question mattered more than he knew. Then came the message that shifted everything. Jimmy said something like this. He said that after the show, a few crew members talked about taking tomorrow morning slower. One said they would finally use a day off they had been postponing. Another said they felt less alone. Jimmy said the show had given permission without trying to. Keanu read that slowly. He felt his throat tighten, not with sadness but with humility. He had not planned to change anything. He had only answered honestly, yet honesty had moved people toward rest and care. That felt powerful in a quiet way. The climax did not arrive with drama. It arrived with a choice. Keanu realized he could return to his old pattern tomorrow. He could say thank you, smile, and continue as before, or he could let the moment reshape him. The second option felt uncertain but true. He opened his calendar and looked at the days ahead. Full, generous, crowded, commitments he had made with good intentions. He did not cancel everything. He did not erase responsibility. Instead, he chose one small act of respect toward himself. He moved one meeting, just one, not to escape but to breathe. That single change felt heavier than it should have. It revealed how rarely he had allowed himself flexibility. He closed the calendar and sat with the feeling. He reminded himself of the words spoken on stage. Rest is not failure. Kindness includes yourself. The next morning, sunlight reached the room softly. Keanu woke without an alarm. He noticed how his breath felt deeper, steadier. The city noise was distant. For the first time in a long while, he did not rush to fill the quiet. He let it exist. Later that day, he returned briefly to the studio area to thank a few people personally. Not for praise, but for presence. He spoke with a technician who mentioned the lighting issue. Keanu listened and thanked them for protecting everyone without causing fear. The technician smiled, surprised to be acknowledged. Respect traveled both ways. One crew member shared that the moment on air reminded them to check in with themselves. Keanu listened without trying to respond perfectly. He simply said he was glad they felt seen. Humility stayed at the center. He did not become a symbol. He stayed human. News outlets would later describe the interview as honest and moving. Clips would circulate. Comments would appear, but Keanu did not read them right away. He did not need validation. He needed alignment. The true climax was internal. He realized that the breath he took on stage was not the peak. It was the beginning. The real test was whether he would keep breathing with awareness when no one was watching. As evening returned, Keanu walked alone for a short distance, hands in his pockets, pace unhurried. He felt the weight of the world, but he no longer carried it alone. He carried it with intention, with boundaries, with respect. The suspense that once lived in the studio lights now lived in a quieter place. Would this lesson last? Would kindness remain active? Would honesty stay present? Keanu looked up at the sky and felt calm certainty. Not everything had to be answered tonight. Some truths unfold slowly, and for the first time in a long time, he trusted himself to wait. Morning arrived without urgency. Light entered the room in a calm, even way, resting on the walls instead of demanding attention. Keanu sat near the window with a cup of warm water, watching the city begin its quiet routine. There was no noise inside him pushing him forward. The breath he had taken days earlier was still with him, steady and patient. He thought about how the moment on the show had already begun to fade from public attention, replaced by news stories and louder headlines. That felt right. Meaningful things were not meant to stay loud. They were meant to stay true. He felt no need to protect the moment or repeat it. It had already done its work. Later that day, Keanu returned home. Familiar spaces greeted him with a different energy. The rooms felt the same, but he did not move through them the same way. He slowed down without forcing it. He noticed how his shoulders rested lower. He noticed how silence no longer felt like something to escape. A friend called to check in. The conversation was simple. They talked about ordinary things, whether travel, small plans. Then the friend asked the question that once would have triggered a polite answer. "How are you doing?" Keanu paused, not for effect, but for honesty. He said he was learning how to listen, learning how to rest, learning how to accept care without guilt. The friend did not rush to respond. They said that sounded like progress. Keanu smiled. Days passed, not dramatically, not perfectly. Some mornings he felt light. Some mornings he felt the old weight return. But now he recognized it sooner. He did not argue with it. He treated it like information, not failure. When work demanded energy, he gave it fully. When rest was needed, he allowed it. Balance was not a destination. It was a daily choice. Messages continued to arrive, quiet ones, from people he did not know personally. A makeup artist from another show said the interview helped them speak up about exhaustion. A crew member from a different studio said they finally took a break without apologizing. Keanu read these messages slowly. He did not feel pride. He felt responsibility handled gently. He responded when he could with simple words, no advice, no instructions, just respect. He knew that inspiration did not come from telling people what to do. It came from showing that permission existed. One evening, Keanu sat alone on his porch as the sky shifted from blue to gray. The air cooled. The world softened. He thought about the overheating lights again, how they were designed to shine until someone intervened. He realized that systems rarely stop themselves. People have to choose pause. Kindness has to be intentional. He thought about Jimmy, about the question that changed the night. He sent a brief message of thanks. Jimmy replied with warmth, saying that the show continued but the lesson stayed. Keanu appreciated that. The moment belonged to everyone who needed it. The final resolution came quietly. Keanu understood that honesty did not make him vulnerable in a weak way. It made him available in a human way. Available to himself, available to others, available to rest. He did not become a different person. He became a more present one. Weeks later, someone asked him about that night again. They wanted to know if he planned it. Keanu smiled and said no. He said he simply listened to a breath that asked to be noticed. He said sometimes that is enough. The story did not end with applause or headlines. It ended with continuity. Kindness carried forward, respect deepened. Resilience became softer and stronger at the same time. Keanu took another breath, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. The world did not stop, but he moved through it with care.